What's up, guys? Welcome into another edition of Bogey Free. I am your host, Matt Jones. You can find me on Twitter at MattJonesTFR. And we had some technical difficulties tonight, so we're a little behind the eight ball here. But I wanted to make sure I got a show out for you guys. So basically, the audio on my computer just decided not to work. So that's kind of a problem with podcasting when you're talking to somebody else. So yeah, I hopefully fix that issue. Somebody hops into the chat and lets me know that they could hear me. That would be even better. But yeah, so we are here for another week. We have the Byron Nelson this week. We are a week out from the PGA Championship, so I'm sure everybody has their mindset and their eyes set on Bethpage Black in a couple of weeks. But we do have an interesting course this week. Definitely has mixed reviews from the pros, as well as from just general, watchers of golf. It's definitely a different aesthetic than we're used to on the PGA Tour. I guess you consider it like American links, but even that's kind of like a weird term. It's a par 71. It kind of varies depending on setup from like 73 to like 7,500 yards. The greens are gigantic, right? They're an average of 13,000 square feet compared to the Heritage a couple weeks ago, which was, I believe, right under 6,000 square feet. So we're looking at just gigantic greens. They're like almost a third of a football field. Like it's just, they're monstrous. There's no water on this course. There are 85 bunkers that the players will have to deal with, but there's definitely some scoring opportunities here. This was the 5th or 6th easiest course on tour last year. 7 guys in the field broke 100 DraftKings points. So we're definitely looking at birdie opportunities. We're definitely looking at some low scores possible. I would be shocked if we didn't have at least 1 or 2 59 watches going to start the week for us here on Thursday or Friday. And that'll probably only, ramp up over the weekend. Yeah. So why don't we hop right into it after I tell you about the RotoViz subscription? We just launched a couple weeks ago. The deal is it's $6.99 a month or $24.99 for the rest of the season. You get access to the course preview and trends article that I write every week, the Yahoo article, the DraftKings article, ownership projections, top 20 models. So there's a lot there. Definitely one of the cheaper subscriptions that you're going to see around as far as DFS content goes. And to spruce it up even a little bit more, monthly subscribers get $5 off their NFL sub if they choose to carry on with RotoViz through the football season, which you obviously should be doing. And season-long subscribers get $10 off their NFL sub. So jump into the PGA, take a few events here, see what you like about it, and then stick with us through football season because there's a lot of cool stuff going up right now on the football side, whether you're into redraft or dynasty or whatever you're doing, best ball. Beers' apps are up and everything. So we're pumping out content all the time over at RotoViz. So make sure you hop in there. I'm going to just quickly go through a couple of the more popular options. Just looking through fan share and everything. Brooks is the most expensive guy on the board. He's at 11,400. For obvious reasons, it's a pretty weak field. And he's coming off a runner-up finish at the Masters. How can I put this nicely? He's sort of been known to not show up at non-majors, or at least that's sort of the reputation that he's getting. I don't think that's like totally a thing. But yeah, I mean, I guess you could consider it. But he's been playing reasonably well. He hasn't hit fewer than 65% of his greens since September. So that's obviously something that we're looking at. And he's scored 75 plus DraftKings points in 4 of his past 5 starts. So if you're looking for an expensive guy who's probably going to be reasonably popular, then Brooks is your guy. If we dip down a little bit, Keith Mitchell is another name that's been popping. He's 9,100. He won a couple months ago. He's been a little bit up and down since then, I think it's fair to say. I have this feel like if you were designing a course for Keith Mitchell, it would be wide open, right? Somewhere where he could attack pins and get some birdie putts. And that's exactly what this course is. Since the start of this year, he has 11 starts. He's scored 60 plus DraftKings points in 8 of them, and he's broken 90 points 3 times. So you're looking at a guy who has been playing well so far this year. He had a little bit of a victory hangover, but who can blame him for that? And he played well. I know, LOL course history, but he played well here last year. He hit 90% of greens in regulation, which just goes to show you how just crazy big these greens are. But nonetheless, it's definitely a course for him. I think if you're willing to eat a little bit of ownership, he definitely makes sense. I could see ownership being a little flat in this range in general. So like the, 91 to 9,800 range, like pretty much the whole 9K range, could be pretty close ownership wise. So it's definitely something to watch out for if he gets like super popular. But I think he's just going to be an interesting name, and you could probably have 15% of them and be slightly overweight to the field and feel pretty good about it. For this week. The lower option that's sort of been talked about a little bit, tagged a bunch on FanShare at 7,600 is Trey Mullinax. He's had hit 65% of his greens each of the past 2 goes. He lost almost 3.5 strokes on the greens last week and finished 50th, still managed to make the cut and everything. But that's kind of his MO, right? He's lost strokes putting in 12 of the last 15 times that he's teed it up. So definitely looking at, again, trying to put it nicely, a less than optimal putter for sure. But if he can get after some greens here, he can take advantage of the distance that he has off the tee. Maybe, he can streak together some birdies and figure out a way to pop on the leaderboard. Maybe, top 15, top 20 is definitely within his range of outcomes. He performed really well in the top 15 model that I built this week. So yeah, he's someone that I'm somewhat interested in, but it really depends on where the ownership goes. I don't want it to end up being that he pushes towards like 16 to 18%. And then you're talking about really having to take a stand on him at 7,600. 9 times out of 10, I'd rather fade those guys, to be completely honest. I think that there's the talent level and the sort of, I guess, like just a stat-based look at all of this. You can't really make a huge case for any of these guys in the 74 to 7,900 range over another one. So I'd rather just kind of play the game theory and shoot for some lower ownership, and that would make it a lot easier to stomach in a GPP. So those are the 3 guys that popped in the different price ranges for me as far as the first run of ownership goes. You can check that out, obviously, at RotoViz tomorrow. It usually posts around like 10 or 12. And then I'll update it as the day goes on and as things start to take shape a little bit as far as ownership goes. But it's definitely It's definitely could still move a little bit, but I'm pretty confident at least that Brooks, people will find a way to get Brooks in their lineup, that people will be drawn to the third place finish and decent recent form with Mitchell. And Mullinax just seems almost in the same vein as Mitchell, that he just seems like this is the kind of course that these guys should be able to take advantage of. And if that's the case, we know that they can streak some birdies together. So those are the top three guys as of right now, in their respective in their respective salary ranges. But again, things sort of change, so make sure you're staying up to date. I'll tweet out the links to the show, or the articles tomorrow, and you can figure out where you want to go as far as game theory, for this week. So let's jump into a couple of pivots that I'm interested in as well. Before we do that, I do want to remind you guys, you can hop into the listener league this week. We filled pretty easily with 40 guys last week, so I'm literally making it right now. I guess I will bump it back up to 50 and trust you guys, but we got to make sure that this fills, because it's a sad state of affairs when it doesn't fill. Same deal as usual, 50 guys or ladies, whatever. Top three take down some money, and it's $5 to get in. So yeah, I'm making that right now. It'll be in the iTunes description, and I'll tweet it out, obviously, and maybe Evan throws me a retweet here and there. And we'll get this thing filled this week. All right, let's jump into a couple of pivots. As far as the 9,500 and up range, it's interesting that Leishman didn't really pop in the course fit model. We know he pretty much tore this place apart last year. He was leading after the first, second, and third rounds. He shot, I believe, a 68 on Sunday, but obviously that wasn't enough. He was chased down. So that was kind of interesting to me. I mean, just, can we talk quickly about how tilting Hideki is? Like, he's one of I wrote it up this week, I forgot which article it was, but he's got to be on the Mount Rushmore of like tilting golfers to roster. He starts off slow every single week. Like, he basically hasn't shot in the 60s on Thursday since January, more or less. And he really hasn't done that well on Fridays either. He has a couple of rounds in the 60s on Fridays, but for the most part, he's just been a disaster. He's always going to pop because of his ball striking. Like, he's always going to gain strokes off the tee. For the most part, he's always going to hit greens, and he's always going to suck at putting, which is the kind of guys that we always sort of target, because we know that if you catch a hot putter with a guy who's hitting a ton of greens, then you're going to do pretty well more often than not. I don't know that I can go back to him this week, though. I think if it shakes out the way that I'm thinking right now, he's going to be the second highest owned above 9,500, and I don't think that there's, well, besides Eam, but I don't think that there's a way that I can roster him in DFS. I'll throw an outright on him. I'll throw a top 10 on him, just in case. But I think that there's just too much risk involved in Hideki right now. Like, something is obviously off. Then you have Spieth, Stenson, Reed, and Eam to go along with Leishman in this range. 9,600 for Eam seems like a reasonable price. He's going to be the lowest owned in this range for sure. There's really not a question there. And he's performed pretty well, right? Like, he didn't exactly, he kind of got saved by his putter last week, but he's going to hit, probably 80% of his greens this week, considering the size of them. And if he can average 27, 28 putts around, then I mean, what more could you possibly ask for at 9,600 with his scoring upside and the ability to fit like a nice balanced lineup, a bunch of guys in this 9K range and 8K range that we like. It's pretty hard to argue with Eam. If we dip down a little bit further into sort of like the 8K to 9,400 range, I guess. It's kind of a short list, honestly. There's 14 guys in this range this week, and God, it's so frustrating when you know that like great, like Rory Sabatini popped this week. Like Rory Sabatini is not somebody that I don't know if I've ever rostered him, to be totally honest. He played well here last year. It's coming off a top 10 at the Heritage, which is a totally different course. But he did play well last week. Also, he's hitting like close to two-thirds of his greens over his last 4 starts, which is great and a good sign coming in here, especially when it's going to be so easy to hit greens. Yeah, Jason in the chat just asked about why he's Sabatini. CH3 is cheaper than him. Yeah, that's absolutely insane. CH3 is down at 8,500 this week. I can't imagine CH3 not seeing like heavy ownership. But he's missed a couple of cuts here. Last week was pretty gross as far as his off the tee game goes. He hit like not even 40% of his fairways, but he did hit 60% of his greens still. So I see myself going back to him again. He popped as the #1 course fit in my model. So I guess I'm losing money on Howell again this week. I think this is the definitive week though. Like if he doesn't get it together this week and make some noise in like a shit field and a course that he'll have a ton of birdie putts on, then I think I'm out for a while. Just because it's too much. Like we said it all through the beginning of the season. He really got a bad rap for not having any upside, and then he immediately over the last couple of weeks shows you why he got that rap in the first place. But heading into that round, the event at the Heritage, he had scored over 70 DraftKings points in every single start since January. So he's definitely shown that he can score a little bit this year. But God, I mean, I feel like I'll have to have him and have a decent amount of exposure to him, but it doesn't feel great right now. Outside of him, this range is one where I'm really trying to narrow in a little bit. I think Ryan Moore makes a little bit of sense. He popped in the model. I think he's like 4th or 5th or something like that. And I think it makes a ton of sense. Like the fit is for sure there. I know he didn't play well the last time that we saw him. I think he was like in the 40s at the Heritage, but this is a totally different track. Like I'd much rather go off of what a guy did at Valero for this week than I would what a guy did at the Heritage. And at the Valero, he finished 3rd. So I'm hoping he gets some comfort down in Texas again and can pop a little bit, and help us take down a GPP or 2. That'd be nice. Bjerregaard makes sense too. He did not pop in the model, but he hasn't really played a ton, and he played well at the Masters. And it's for sure not the same type of course, but I feel like it requires some distance. You got to hit greens, same kind of deal here. So I'll take maybe a couple of shares of Bjerregaard and hope for the best, but I'm not gonna go crazy on him for sure. God, this is so annoying having to do this by myself and not being able to take a breath, but it is what it is. The next range sort of spreads out a little bit. I think from 7,900, which is Scotty Scheffler, all the way down to Ryan Blum at 7,000. There's almost 50 guys. The main guys that I'm really focused on, I wrote up for the Yahoo piece. I just saw that that's Wedge, and his name is Jay. You need to change your name on YouTube, Jason, because it's not Jason, it's Wedge. Yeah, I completely lost my train of thought now. The two guys that I wrote up for the Yahoo article over at RotoViz are Matt Jones and KH Lee. Jones popped insanely in the model. He's like the second highest. KH Lee, not as much. He's definitely a bargain over on Yahoo though, because I think it's like $24 or something. Like he's almost like minimum price, and that's kind of insane. So those two guys are two of my more confident GPP flyers. I could see a case to be made for Scheffler, though I think he's going to get popular. As popular as these guys in this range get, but I could see him pushing like 12, 13%. Yeah, that's kind of, I don't want to sit here and list off everybody like a lot of other shows, but yeah, those three are the ones that immediately caught my attention. Once you go below 7,000, again, this type of field, it gets disgusting in a hurry. I'm gonna go back to the well with Lebioda down at 6,700. I think he makes sense. If you're gonna go Aussie narrative, I think Cameron Davis could make a little bit of sense at 6,700. And then outside of that, I'm probably going to play like mostly cash and really limit my exposure this week. I don't see a situation where I get super confident on like enough of the player pool to play, 20 lineups or throw in 50 lineups somewhere. I don't see that happening this week. And I want to save some bullets for Beth Page the following week. So those are kind of my GPP flyers down at the bottom. I think you could do a lot worse than Lebioda at 6,700. So for my cash locks, usually this is when I can stall and make somebody else go first, but it's just me. So I'm definitely going to roll with Sungjae. I think that the price is perfect for him. Locking in somebody at 9,600 really allows you to do whatever you want elsewhere. If you want to start at 9,600, I wouldn't fault you, and just hope that maybe the motivation isn't there for the guys above him, and they're just sort of playing to keep in shape or to keep some sponsor happy, and then flying up private to Bethpage. After that, God, I mean, it's definitely Sungjae, and you know what? I'm gonna trust the model. I'm gonna go with Matt Jones at 7,500, as well as the two guys that I'm willing to go pretty heavy on and lock in, because it's a gross week. I think if you lock Eam and Jones in, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Let's see what they leave you if you throw those two guys in a lineup. That still leaves you with 8,200, a little bit over 8,200 per spot left over, and that's a home run in this field. Like you could go down to a Lebioda all the way down at 6,700 in a GPP, and then fill it out with a couple of 9K guys. Or you could stay kind of balanced and live in that same range and go with some of the guys that we mentioned before with a Howell, with maybe, throw in a Ryan Moore there or somebody. You can definitely you could definitely make a case for just going balanced and staying between Eam and KH Lee at 7,500. Like you could build some really nice lineups with a bunch of upside for this field. We're not looking at world beaters here. We're looking at one guy in the top 10, I think like 4 in the top 30, which, I mean, surprisingly doesn't even include Spieth anymore. I think he's like 39th in the world right now or something ridiculous. So, yeah, I'm just pulling that up real quick. Yeah, he's 39th in the world. So, you're looking at, if there's a little bit of chaos up at the top, you're looking at balanced lineups just going crazy, because I don't see, the same thing as last week. I don't see a 350 or 400 to one shot winning this week. I think it's going to come from somebody between Howell and Eam would be my prediction. So take that for what it is. Make sure you're following along on Twitter at Matt Jones TFR to stay up to date on everything that's happening during the week. And make sure you head over to RotoViz for the subscription. It's a good deal. You get the ownership projections, you get the articles, and you also get access to the apps, which are really cool. And I just wrote up a little article about how to use them on Friday. So make sure you check that out as well. And good luck in your contest this week, and we will talk soon. See ya.